Mordechai, you got it? Okay, good morning. Masechet Pessachim Lamed Zayin. Last word on the line is Suf Ganin. You see it? And then it's Tanu Rabbanan. It's for sure in the big lines, more towards the bottom. I would say about 12 lines from the bottom. Yeah? Tanu Rabbanan. Suf Ganin V'aduv Shinin. So a little bit of it's not we call Suf Ganin a donut, but it's a little bit of a bread made like a sponge. V'aduv Shinin. It's a different type of bread that is made fried in honey. Va'is kritin, and a different is kritin, which you're going to see in a second what it is.
Wafers.
Bechalat hamisoret. What does it say there in English?
A pan loaf.
Anyway, the first one is made like a sponge. The second one is made like fried in honey. The third one is like a mufleta. And what is a misoret? Doesn't say. Then it's made in a pan. V'medume. And also, if you have something which is piturin min chala, all of things are patur from chala. So now, since we're speaking about different doughs that are used for matzah, we're digressing a little bit to speak about the mitzvah of challah. The mitzvah of challah is that when you have dough, you got to give a little bit to the Kohen and a little bit of amount to the Kohen, and that is one of the 24 presents that the Kohen gets for serving the Bet Mikdash. The Kohen serves 3 times a year at the very minimum. He's a communal servant, and therefore the Torah awards him a certain payment for that. And one of the payments is challah. Now we're going to see now a discussion: when do you have to give challah? Is it a regular bread or all types of bread? So we just now spoke about it. What's called the suf ganin. It's like a sponge type bread. I wonder what it says over there, Chaim.
Sponge bread.
A sponge bread. You have what is a duf shinin. It's like a bread that's fried in honey. You have a is skrifin, which is a wafer, but I would say it's almost like a crepe, the way I see in Rashi. Bechalat hamisoret. Chalat hamisoret is something that is cooked in a pan. It's bread cooked in a pan, it's not cooked in an oven. And then you have a medumeh. Medumeh is when chulin maybe fell into it. Don't forget that you're allowed to eat what's called chulin, and the Kohen is allowed to eat truma. What if a little bit of truma maybe falls into the chulin? So you have some dough, and a little bit of some Kohen maybe drops some of his dough into your dough, and that's called medumeh. What do we do with that? That is a problem in eating it, and there's a way to fix it, but you don't need to give challah on that. And the reason you don't give challah on the last one, medumeh, Rashi explains, is because the Torah says, Tarimu trumat Hashem, and not that there's truma inside of it. You got to give truma from it, but not if truma is already inside of it. Anyways, the Gemara says, "My chanat mesoret amar bishur ben nevi zeh chalut shel banibatim." They used to take the dough and they used to boil it and scald it in water before cooking it. All these things are patur from challah. The Gemara wants to know why. Amar Rish Lakish, halanu maaseh ilpasen, and the reason is they're cooked in a pan. What does it say ilpas there? Right?
Frying pan.
A frying pan.
Yeah.
When you fry bread inside of a pan, that's not called bread. And bread, we're going to see later, needs to be done in an oven. So according to Resh Lakish, once it's fried in a pan, there's no challah to give. That is the opinion of Resh Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan amar masid pas chayavin v'halalu sha'asan b'chama. And Rabbi Yochanan says no. If you fry it in a pan, you got to give challah. And this is talking about something which is done out in the open in the sun. I guess in hot places it's hot enough that you could actually take it, put it in the sun, and it will rise. Is that true? You can make a bread from it. You could cook a bread from it.
It's very hard.
Huh?
You can make it in the ground, something like the Arab.
Make it in the ground. I guess that's what they do. So here he says the reason why these things are not done with don't give challah is because they were done in the sun. So it's very simple. Machlokes. Do we have to give challah? Challah, by the way, your wife gives challah every week when she makes the chalot. She takes afrashat challah. She burns it. It's a very important mitzvah. It's one of the mitzvah to the women. On these things, there's no challah. Machloket. Why? According to Rabbi Yochanan, because they're in the pan. But according to Resh Lakish, because they're in the pan. According to Rabbi Yochanan, they're made in the sun. According to Rabbi Yochanan, anything made in the pan has to be given challah, and the halakha actually is like that.
What about the shiur the mitzaref? For example, you have a huge amount of donuts or bagels, something like that you make.
So the shiur is in a whole nother inyan if you give challah or not, if you say a bracha. But here, do you have to give challah on yogurt? You don't have to give challah on yogurt. This is like yogurt. It's not called bread. You give bread. You give truma on bread, and bread is not done in a pan according to Resh Lakish, and according to Rabbi Yochanan, it is Dash Lakish. Let's see machlok the this. Metive asuf ganin v'aduv shini v'is kritin. These 3 types of breads that we spoke about. Asan bidpas chayavin. There's a braita which seems to contradict Resh Lakish. If you did it in a pan, it's chayav behama piturin. If you did it in the sun, it is patur. Tiyufta de Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. This is a refutation of Rashbag. Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish. Amar Ula, Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish, Resh Lakish will answer, Acha b'may skinan, shichtiach uli b'sof idbik. No, why is it chayev? Because the type of pan that he said Resh Lakish to your potter is if you put the dough in the pan, then you put the pan in the fire. That's not the regular way of making bread. But if you light up the fire, if you heat up the fire, heat up the pan, give a little spray over there, and then put the dough inside of it, that's a regular way. Even according to Resh Lakish, you'll be chayev to do that. Aval hitbik uli b'sof irtiach mai achenami piturin. But if you put the bread inside the pan and then you cook it, you're potter. The Gemara says, "At the Tani Seifa, asan b'chama piturin v'niflu v'nivne v'dideh b'midvarim murim kigon shichtiach v'sof yidbik." Just saying a more clear way of saying the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, what did we just say in the Mishnah? If you did it in a pan, you're chayiv. If you did it in the sun, you're potter. 1 second. If the whole distinction of the pan is if you heated up the pan before or after, so why teach it like that? Just teach that you... meaning if you heat it up before, then it's chayiv. If you didn't heat it up before, it's potter. So just teach it more simply and more straightforward. If you heat it up in a pan, you're chayiv. If you heat up the pan, then you put the bread in, then you're chayiv. If you didn't heat up the pan, you're potter. It would have been an easier way of teaching. And then for sure, if it's in the sun, it's going to be potter. So the Gemara says, and really the Braita is missing words. What are we talking about? When you're chayav, when you lit up the pan and then you put the dough inside. But if you put the dough inside and then you lit it up, potter, it's like you did it in the sun and it's potter. So therefore we have a little bit of a clarification in Shitat Resh Lakish. Rabbi Yochanan says a pan is always chayav for challah. You make it in a pan. By the way, a lot of nafkaminas and things like this. If you make a pancake, if you make a pancake, you make different things. You have
Mufleta.
a sphinge, mufleta. You're going to have to give a challah on it.
It's specified before if there's little or no oil though,
yes,
or liquid.
so a tiny bit of oil is what we're talking about. If a lot of oil, it might not be good. But a little bit of oil that it shouldn't burn is not called oil. If it's deep fried, that's for sure right. Yeah. Okay, so according to Rabbi Resh Lakish, a pan is always chayev. According to Rabbi Yochanan, according to Resh Lakish, it's only chayev if you lit up the fire and heated up the pan first and then made your item. But if you put it in together and heat up together, that's not the regular waking.
It's like afia. It's like afia.
Like what?
Afia.
It's like afia, exactly right. Afia is you heat up the oven and then you put it in. Tana Rabbanan. Tashna. Yotzin b'matzah hina. If you have matzah which is hina, you are yotzeh. And the Gemara says, umatzah hasui be'idpas. And second, you're also allowed to be yotzeh matzah made in a pan. So b'diavad, if they had no ovens, and by the way, you hear a lot of stories like that in Germany and in Auschwitz and stuff like that. They didn't have ovens, and sometimes they would actually make a matzah on a pan. So here he says, you're yotzeh b'matzah hina, and you're yotzeh b'matzah that is made in impas. Achanami, so you see over here, kusha on Resh Lakish. Because you see your yoitze, and it's a real bread. Don't forget, you have to eat what's called lechem oni. On Pesach, you're eating bread. So if you're eating bread, it has to be made in an oven. No, here you see it's made in a pan. So you see that pan is bread. If pan is bread, then you have to give chal on it. The Gemara says, "Achenami shirtiach u'v'sofit bik." Resh Lakish is going to get around this by saying, yes, the pan was lit up, fired up, and then you put the flour inside of the dough inside of it. My matzahina. So therefore, it's not a kushanim. What is matzahina that you're yoitze? And this is important. Mar Yehuda, Mar Shmuel, Kol sheperusa ben chotin nimshachin emena. If you break it and there's no stringiness a little bit. When you take dough, it's just a big batter. It's like a Play-Doh, right? And then you bake it, it turns into what we have, a good bread. But there's a middle point over there. And the middle point is if you break it, it's actually a little bit of, you never got a piece of cake or a cookie that wasn't cooked fully inside and you break it open, it's a little bit gooey inside and there's like strings of dough that could still come over there. Matzahina is if you break it, and by the way, these types of breads which are not fully cooked, they break very quickly. Like if you take a bread that's not fully cooked, so they break off very quickly and they crumble a little bit in your hands. So here, so long as there's no strings of wheat, it's still called matzah. Strings of dough, I'm sorry. Because if you have strings of dough, it's not cooked yet, and it could become chametz. Very quickly, it could become chametz. So therefore, but that's why they make the challah, by the way, if you put the matzah bakery, that's why they're so thin. And they actually check each matzah afterwards if a little bit of dough is still left inside, they would throw it out if there is. They make it thin so that there's no dough inside, it cooks very quickly. So if you have matzahina, you're yotzin. What is matzahina? If you break it and there's no strings. The Gemara says, Amarav, but we can nach mitoida. Lach mitode, which also needs to be matzah. Don't forget, when you go to the Beit HaMikdash and you're bringing a korban todah, You bring a korban, and you got to bring 40 breads. 10 of the breads you're type of bringing are matzahs. And you got to give 1 to the Kohen, and you keep 9 for yourself, and you got to invite people. They got to be eaten. They can't be burnt. And the reason why you need so many is that you invite a lot of people to tell the miracle that you had. When you had a miracle and you have to say korban todah, so the way that the korban was is you got to get a lot of people to be able to say the miracle you had. The ken lachmei toida. Lachmei toida, also if it's matzah, how are you going to be yotzeh? You got to make sure that if you break it, there's no strings of dough. The Gemara says, pshita, isn't that pashut? Acha lechem kitiv. It's written bread. So bread we know that it's not stringy, it's not doughy. The Gemara says, V'acha lechem kitiv. Mal detema huid v'kitiv v'kchiv mimenu echad mikod korban. Since you're giving to the Kohen 1 out of every types of breads, echad shelo yitod parus. Like I told you before, these things that are not fully cooked, they break like in a second. So when you're going to give it to the Kohen in his hand, it's going to break. And since it's written, you got to give 1 bread to the Kohen, well, 1 bread means a full bread. And when you gave it to him, it's broken. So you might have think that it's not yotze, even though it's lechem china, it's matzah china, meaning it went out of the category of being dough. It's not dough, but it's not cooked enough to the point where it won't break. It does break. You're still yotze with that. Obvious. That's regular bread. No, it's not so obvious, because since you have to give 1 full bread to the Kohen, and this breaks, it might not be 1 full item. Kamash manan, that is, you gave it to him the full, it broke in his hands, it's not your problem, you are yotze. Meitive. Ha'ma'isa bet shamai putrin. Ubet chilel mechayvim. So if you have something which is called me'isa, you are, according to Bet Shammai, don't have to give mechala, and according to Bet Hillel, you didn't need to give chala. Ichlita, if you have what's called ichlita, Bet Shammai mechavim, Bet Hillel potrim. Bet Shammai says you got to give chala, Bet Hillel says you don't give chala. The exact opposite, okay? Machloket. The Gemara says, Euzu misa v'zu ichlita. What are these 2 things? Hameisa kemer shal gebe muglashin. So if you either have, basically it's cooked dough. It's the dough which is cooked. You take the dough, the flour, and you put kemach al gebi muglin. You put the water in the take a little bowl of hot boiling water, and then you put the flour inside. That is called me'isa. Ichlita muglashim shal gebi kemach. And what is ichlita? Is if you have flour and then you pour the water on top. So there's machloket Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel. One says like this, one says like this. You got to give challah, you don't give challah. We're going to see in a second. There's not really a machloket. Rabbi Shimon ben Rabbi Yossi omer mishum aviv zeh v'zeh liftor. And according to Rabbi Yossi, don't forget we said before that if it's cooked things, if it's cooked flour, if you cook the dough, then it's not real dough. It's not regular bread. A bagel might not have to give a challah. Because bagel, they take the dough. How do they do it? They cook the dough, or they cook the
they cook the dough and then they bake it.
So they make it into the round thing. They put it in hot scalding water. They came out. That, according to what we said before, is patur from challah. That's not called bread. That's called cooked. That's called the bishul.
But the gemara is the afiyah.
You're right. So that's a question. That's a question we're going to see now.
Ikar bishul is the afiyah.
Yes. Ikar bishul is the afiyah, but what we said before is that the opinion says once it goes in water, it's not called afiyah. Afiyah is a regular standard afiyah. Okay, so here you have these things which were basically the flour.
I don't think it's eatable after the boil.
It's not eatable, but still there's a process that's not a regular baking. There's an extra process there which is called it's not a baking. It's also called a cooking baking. The Torah said bread, and what is bread? It's a good food. It's very nice. It's a bagel. Is it called bread? If I send you to the store and you bring back bagels, I said bread. Did you get what I wanted? If you said bagels and I got you bread, did I get what? It's not the right. It's a different thing, right? So here we have like some cooked flour. So some say, according to Rabbi Shmuel, everybody says he's potter. Some say everybody says he says chayim. And this is what we want for now. Chachamim omrim echad zeh v'echad zeh asa'an ve'ilpas. You know that Rabbeinu says in Torah Samech, Yaakov, that there's shvilei Torah that you need idboninut rav. You need certain idboninut, and to get to that idboninut, you need kol hon de'alma, which I spoke before. You need asherut, you need wealth. Rabbeinu says later that the wealth is the psolet, and he says like hagdamot. The idboninut is hagdamot. Hagdamot is you need one. I want to get you to the mikuvan. I want to teach you something. What does Rabbi Natan do? He takes you on ilchot of chala, ilchot of this, all the details, all the shitot, and then he explains you all that, and then he lets it go, and he brings you to the mikuvan, a chizuk and avodat Hashem that you can't believe it, like basar v'chalav. We spoke once. You need basar before chalav or chalav before basar. It basically means if you fail, you have to get up. Don't be embarrassed. He takes all these akdamot of the Torah to get you to the mikuvan. And this is called itbonenut. You need itbonenut rav together. Shvidat Torah. To get to that, you need ashirut. But it's interesting. Rabbeinu calls the ashirut the same as agdamot. The ashirut is agdamot. Rabbeinu says over there. And to get to the agdamot, you need ashirut. And he calls it psolecha. The luchot ha'eben Moshe Rabbeinu psolecha. Mekan itasher Moshe. Moshe Rabbeinu became rich from the psolet of the luchot. So the psolet is agdamot. Why is it agdamot? Because I don't care about the basar b'chalav at the end. I want to know, don't give up for Hashem. You know? That's the don't give up. And yush. But I needed to give you agdamot. I wanted to give you the... But at the end, it's psolet. The psolet, mikam itasher Moshe. So the ashirut, the Rabbeinu says in Torah Samech, and the psolet is one thing. The agdamot and the psolet is one thing. Why does Rabbeinu call the agdamot ashirut? Because it takes a lot of time to get the agdamot. And you have to not be busy with olam hazeh. But by the way, we said before that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was the richest one, but he didn't benefit from this world. So it's not the pshat to indulge. The pshat is, I don't need to be busy with olam hazeh, so I have time for the agdamot. And so therefore, the pshat there is that every piece of Gemara, Mishnah, Halacha, Shita, Minhag, all that is agdamot to get to the Mikuvan of the Tzaddik. Every page of the way a Breslover learns the Gemara, the way he learns the Halacha, the way he learns the Machloktot and the Minagim. But what does it make a difference? It's too tedious, it's so technical. That's the Agdamot to get to the Mikuvan. The whole Likutei Moran, he takes you from here, takes you from here, takes you from here, and he gives you something, and at the end, you don't even remember what the proofs. You remember that you can serve Hashem, that Hashem loves you. All those things, you need the Agdamot. So every page that we're learning, every Amoud, everything is more Agdamot to get to the Or that the Tzaddik wants to give us at the end. Now, we're lucky that we have both. Because some people stay only in Agdamot, only in Agdamot, only Agdamot. And some people, they want only the Or, but they don't understand. To get the Or, it's through the Agdamot. That's what I think in Torah Samech. So all these little things of the challah and this, dushnin, what does it make a difference? I don't cook and I buy it ready and they already give the challah. But all these things will help us get the Agdamot of the Or Hashem, Hashem. So that's what we're saying over here. So Charamim say, Omrim ichad ze v'chad ze, asan bidpas, patur, b'tanur. You see that if I made these flour with water cooked in a pan, it's patur, according to Charamim. B'tanur, chayav. And if you did it in the oven, it's chayav. B'tanakama, so we just found the kushya right now. This is the kushya on Resh Lakish. Resh Lakish said, if you make it in a pan, it is patur. Here we're seeing a pan, according to Charamim, is chayav. According to Bidpas patur. My mistake. A kushya on Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan said a pan is chayav. Here we're saying a pan is patur. An oven is chayav. Now the Gemara is just going to want to know what do we do with Tanakam over the Bet Shammai? Because Bet Shammai, they said, if you put the water first, if you put the water after. If you put the water first, he says patur and he says chayav. And if you put the water after, it's the exact opposite. So the Gemara is asking, before we go to the kushya, B'Tanakama, Ma'ishna hamisa, Ma'ishna chilita. What's the difference? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, if you put the water first, you put the water after, you're going to have to give chayav. You have to give challah. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, we can Amar Rabbi Yehuda, B'itamar Bishua ben Levi, Kemachlokek v'zo, Kamachlokek v'zo, B'tivra, Mishanazor, lo Shanazor. Actually, when say Bet Shammai says this, and Bet Shammai says this, it was two opinions at Bet Shammai. Either Bet Shammai says always chayav, or Bet Hillel says always patur, or the opposite. But either way, there's no machlok in Bet Shammai Bet Hillel. It's whoever taught Bet Shammai Bet Hillel, they taught different things. But Bet Shammai says you're always chayav or always patur. Either way, here's our kusha. Either way, according to Chachamim, if you put it in a pan, you're patur, you don't have to give challah. Betanu chayav tiyuftia de Rabbi Yochanan. This is a kusha on Rabbi Yochanan. We'll just recap what we're saying. We have a mitzvah of challah. Challah is to give a little bit of the dough that you made to the Kohen. When do you have to give to the Kohen? When you're making bread. What is called bread? Rabbi Yochanan said bread is in a pan, no matter what, even if you don't heat up the pan. It's called bread. And we see over here clearly the Chachamim say if you make it in a pan, it's patur. So what will Rabbi Yochanan, who's after Chachamim, do with this? These are Tanaim. So it says Rabbi Yochanan, Tanahi. It's very quick, we're going to finish now. It's a machloket Tanaim. Yes, Chachamim say no, but I go with the opinion that says yes. Detanya. Could it be that they're chayiv, these two things that you put water in, you're chayiv b'chala? Tamu nomar lechem. They're patur because it's not bread. Tamu nomar lechem. Rabbi Yehuda amar en lechem ele afui b'tanur. And Rabbi Yehuda says, no, bread is only in an oven. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda hainu tanakama. Rabbi Yehuda and Tanna Kama the same thing. Elamasi ipas ikabenayu. Tanna Kama savar masi ipas chayvin. Rabbi Yehuda savar masi ipas piturin. So this is where the Rabbi Yochanan will learn out. So we're trying to find. Rabbi Yochanan said if you make bread in a pan, you have to give challah. It's bread. Rabbi Yochanan, how do you say that? We saw Chachamim say you don't have to give challah. No, it's a machloket tanaim. You know where I know from? There's Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda. What about this? What we said over there? This meisa. What is meisa? We said is you take flour, you make it into dough, and you pour hot water on it. You do igui of hot water. You have to give. You don't have to give. Rabbi Yehuda says no because it's not lechem. Tanna Kama says no, it's not lechem. It has to be lechem. And Rabbi Yehuda says it has to be in an oven. Isn't Rabbi Yehuda and Tanna Kama the same thing? Bread and an oven, same thing? Oh, but the fact that they said two different opinions must be a difference between them. And Rabbi Yochanan wants to say the difference isn't a difference within Ipas. So they say like this, Tanna Kama savar maseh Ipas chayavin. When you said bread, what is bread? Bread could also be in an oven. But this is not bread because you put hot water on it. And Rabbi Yehuda said it has to be in an oven, only in an oven. So therefore I found the opinion of Tanna Kama that says that you are chayav if you have bread which was made in a pan. The Gemara says, Rabbi Yehuda savar maseh Ipas piturin. Lo, de kulan mamasid pas pturin. And the answer, the Gemara will say it's not true. Everybody says in a pan it's potter. Who said it? That's what you said, Natan. If you take it and you rebake it in the oven, so you baked it in a pan and then you put it back in an oven. That's the machloket Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda. That's what Natan was saying. You did it in a pan and you put it in the oven. You put it in an oven. That's called bread. So that's what he said. These are potter because they were always in the pan from the get-go and they were made with water. They're not bread. But if you made bread, even if you went in the oven, it's chayav. And Rabbi Yehuda savar en lechem ela afui betanur mikara. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, bread is only if you went in the oven from the first moment. How do we know that Rabbi Yehuda says that you have to cook only in an oven? Because in the curses, when Rabbi said we're going to do mitzvot and they're going to get a chas v'shanam curse from Hashem, the pasuk says, "V'afu eser nashim nachman b'tanur echad." 10 ladies, when they won't have their own ovens, they're going to be so poor that they're going to have to bring all of their breads and bake them in tanur echad. Lechem afui b'tanur. There it says. Vafu eser nashim nachmechem, your breads betanur ichad. Hafui betanur ichad karui lechem, v'she'en hafui betanur ichad en karui lechem. If you bake it inside the oven, it's called lechem. If you don't bake it inside the oven, it's not called lechem. Bottom line, what do we just see now? If you make it in a, it's interesting. My chavus and myself, we took on person. We're going to learn this zman itchot chala. Very important adachot. Not a lot of people learn them. We're learning it now, so it's interesting. If you put it in an oven, for sure it's bread. If you put it in a pan, it's a machloket. If the pan was heated up and then you put it on, every degree it's chayav, because that's like an oven. If you put it in the pan and then put the pan on the fire, that's machloket. Rabbi Yochanan says yes, and Resh Lakish says no. The halacha is like Rabbi Yochanan, if I'm not mistaken. We go like Rabbi Yochanan that even in a pan it's called that you have to give. So therefore you're gonna have to give challah on those things. And Shitat Rabbi Yehuda is even more machmir, that if you put it in and now Shitat Chachamim is since it got in the oven at the end, it's good. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, it has to be in the oven from A to Z. Otherwise, it's not good. We'll just finish the last part over here. Yativ Rabba v'Rav Yosef achroid Rav Zer. Rabba and Rav Yosef were sitting in back in Rav Zer in yeshiva. Yativ Rav Zer kamed, and Rav Zer was in back of Ula. Now you understand, it's like a hierarchy. Like you're his Rav and you're my Rav. I can't ask him; he's too big for me. So I got to ask you to ask him. Ask the Rav like this. I remember sometimes we'd be driving with Rav Kenning in Monsey, and we would shmooze a lot with the Rav. We were like, we were loud, but the son of the Rav, he had so much yirah, the father, we couldn't bother with too many questions, you know. So he would ask us questions to ask his father. So that's what happens over here. Amar Rav Rav Zera, bai mini meula, Rav atod Rav Zera, ask Ula, hidbik mi bifnim, v'yiftiach mi bachutz, mao. If you put according to the opinion, it says that a pan is no good. If you put the dough in the inside and you light the fire on the outside, whoa, what's the deal? Is that no good or no good? Amar le, my ema le, the amina le. What do you think he's gonna do? How can I tell him that? If I tell him that, he's gonna marli. That's exactly impas. What are you asking? That's the machlok in Rabbi Yochanan.
What is exactly impas? What did you use to do?
Impas is the pan, and he's asking a question. when we said a pan is no good, basically he's asking, are we allowed? Do we have to give challah if it's made in a pan? Ask him with the fire in the bottom and the dough on top of the pan. Do we have to give challah? He said, what am I going to ask him? That's an old machloket, Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. Don't need to ask him that. So he said, okay, forget about that question. Ask him another question. Amar Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Zera, Bayi Mine Meula, Hidbikim Mi Bifnim. What about this? When you have a lot of firewood, you put the fire on the bottom. But if you have very little firewood, you need, because what happens is the pan itself is a separation between the fire and the food. So if you have a lot of time, that's the best. Slow cooking is the best. With the separation of the heat, that the heat shouldn't be right away on it. If you flip it, meaning if you flip the, I don't know how you're going to do it. If you have like a half pan and you put the little bit of fire over here, that the fire is going right away on the bread itself, on the dough itself. That's a poor man's way of doing it, because he didn't have a lot of time to waste. He only had a few twigs, so he's going to try to get the most that he can from the fire. So is that called an oven? Because an oven, lichor, the fire is inside. It's on the outside. There's no separation. The fire is in the bottom of the oven, right? So is that like an oven, or is that like a pan? So that's the last question he asked him. We'll finish with this. Amar Rabbi Yosef leRab Zera, Ba'im Ne'ula, Hidbikim Bifnim, V'avuka Kenegdo. Fine, the flour and the dough is in the inside of the pan and the pot, but you put the fire without any separation. Mao, Amar Ma'yem Diaminade, Amani Robani Mosin Ken. What are you asking? All the poor people do like that. And all the people do like that. It says Rashi Robani Mosin Ken, Masechet Pasken, Shena Metzim, Ubikachum Meir Lapot. That's not a question. That's also seemingly the way I understand it is called a pan. That's the question. Even that's called a pan. That's not called an oven. An oven seems to be like the fire is not going directly on the dough. It's like a little bit of like a convection. There's heat inside the whole oven. It's holding here. That's exactly a pan. We don't care if it's in a pan and the fire's here or the fire's from the outside. It's all a pan. That's the machloket, Rabbi Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan Chazak Bo.